Hello and happy Tuesday, which is of course my book reviews day, and today I would like to talk to you about Titus Alone by Mervyn Peake, the regrettably final novel in the Gormenghast Trilogy due to the untimely deterioration and then passing of Mervyn Peake. I did go through the first two novels over the past several weeks here, so please check those videos out. Just like in those ones, I'm going to be showcasing the Folio Society limited edition here, which is heavily illustrated by Dave McKean. Absolutely spectacular with its open spine binding. This was the numbered edition, long since sold out. It got reissued by a standard but still exquisite illustrated edition by Folio Society, which is available now on the website. Still a bit on the pricier side, but you can find, copies with many different illustrations, including some of Peake's own illustrations with wherever books are sold. So anyways, I'm going to try to keep spoilers to a minimum as I'm flying through this, but unfortunately describing some of the situations going on is probably going to require a little bit of spoilers. But I would highly recommend you check out this series if you haven't. So I know that going in, that the first two novels, Titus Grown and Gormenghast, are almost a perfect duology. You have a complete circle within the novels, a very fitting end to it as Titus leaves Gormenghast to explore the outside world. It would be a fitting end. I mean, I would love to see the worlds explored by Titus. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, Mervyn Peake did have, I believe it was a form of dementia that struck him in his 50s. Like he went downhill pretty quickly, ultimately passing less than a decade after that. So all in all, he didn't get to explore the worlds as he saw fit or as he wanted to. This edition, which I believe should be the same as any trade edition, does have a nice note in the front here. I believe the note actually comes from 1992, perhaps here. Oh, 1970. So this 1970, saying how Titus Alone was originally published in 1959. A decade later, they had basically revised the text to kind of incorporate more of Peake's own world that he had not been able to put into the novel. Anyways, we're 3 minutes in. We haven't gotten to the novel itself. Titus Alone is the story, the regrettably brief story of Titus Grown, the Earl of Gormenghast exploring beyond the walls of Gormenghast. One thing you will note with this novel is the chapters are dreadfully short. I mean, there were plenty of short chapters here and there with the other stories, but man, we're talking like really short chapters in this one. I don't know if that is necessarily a statement to Peake's mental health at the time or his deterioration, but man, look at that, 2 paragraphs, that's it, and not even like long paragraphs. One of the paragraphs is a single sentence. So anyways, Titus has wandered beyond the world of Gormenghast and soon finds out, if you're not familiar, Gormenghast is a falling apart, extravagant, gothic city and world within a castle. But he soon finds out outside the world of Gormenghast that the world is quite futuristic. It's not your gothic fantasy. In fact, now we're kind of in a science fiction-y sort of world, your magical realism, as he tries to put himself within the society. Unfortunately, he doesn't quite fit into this society. It's a little bit of culture shock, and soon finds himself at odds with a pair of police officers. It's never quite explained fully who they are. A pair of individuals who are seeking him out and wanting to throw him in jail. And much like in there's Titus falling through a ceiling, breaking through that glass ceiling through the skylight. He finds himself surrounded and enamored by and surrounding himself with very strange characters that only Mervyn Peake can write. If you hadn't watched my previous 2 videos on the other 2 titles, Mervyn Peake, even in his less than 100% state, still has an exceptional way with words. He's still able to create these absolutely fascinating characters. In particular, we have Muzzlehatch here, who's a zookeeper, a bizarre zookeeper. Juno, who is a promiscuous woman when surrounded or when near Titus, and then you eventually meet Cheetah later on. He does bizarre characters incredibly well, almost like Dickensian in a way. Not necessarily cartoonish, but exaggerated in just the absolute best way. It is heartbreaking to have to kind of learn these new characters who don't quite have the same depth as the characters that we've grown to love from the first two novels, which is probably one of the biggest areas in which I'm going to flip past that page. There's Juno and Titus getting it on. But you've grown to love the characters from the first two novels. And while all those characters might not still be around to be in this novel, you will now find your way, moving on to these new characters. And they're still very interesting characters to meet, but it's not the same. You're transplanted into this new world, and it doesn't quite hit the same. One thing I will say, though, is that I did still find the world interesting. Yes, Peake is pretty much starting back at square one. He is taking the familiar character of Titus grown, and he is putting him in a brand new world that is very, very different than the world he has left. And to that degree, it almost kind of reminded me of Gulliver's Travels, the Jonathan Swift novel from, was it the 1700s? But of course, Gulliver in Jonathan Swift's epic was split into 4 books, 4 pieces, in which Gulliver can travel to all these different worlds, different lands, whether it be Lilliput, whether it be, was it Brobdingnagiog, it has been 10 years 11 years now, since I've read Gulliver's Travels, so please excuse me. First world, where he finds that all people are really small. The second book of the novel, where he finds everybody else is really big, he's really small. He finds himself in book 3 amongst fascinating scientists. This will see Vale here, that we're pictured with, yes, the battling with Vale in the Under River. Who is a very fascinating, almost very Dickensian character. As I was saying, with Gulliver's Travels, the third world, where he finds himself with we would now know as scientists and various natural philosophers, and almost going into science fiction realm, that third part feels very much like Titus Alone does here in the world that Titus finds himself. And then, of course, you have part 4 of Gulliver's Travels, where he finds himself with, what were they called? The intelligent horses. But now I'm just talking about Gulliver's Travels. I will say that, yes, here's the two cops, the 2 police officers that are chasing after Titus throughout the novel, moving in unison. Faces are masked. It's a fascinating world that you get to see, and it would have been, had Mervyn Peake had additional decades left of his life in good health and good, clear mind, it would have been fascinating as all hell to see what he would have continued to do with this world, because it very much reads like a novel. It almost reads like Gulliver's Travels, like Titus is going to go and explore the world in any direction he can to see what the world has in store for him. And it would have been remarkable to see what would have been there. So to that degree, this is almost a very sad read. It's a read that brings about what could have been. But I will say, it was still an enjoyable read. It did feel like several novels in one, or several novellas or short stories in one. The entire third act dealing with Cheetah and dealing with the strange ideas and plans that Cheetah has in store for Titus. It reads like a completely different story and a completely different novel than his encounter with Muzzlehatch in the first third. It's almost, like I said, almost like three different short stories or multiple short stories all kind of stitched together, which very well could have been his intent, or it could have been, like I said, due to his health at the time. I do not know. But, I mean, all in all, I still think Titus Alone is a fascinating read. Oh, I'm going to flip past that page with its gorgeous illustration by Dave McKean. I think it's still a fascinating read and a still worth checking out. But it might not shine as brightly as the first two novels did, but it's still a still worthwhile read, even if it almost feels like a unnecessary part tacked on to an already perfect duology, which I feel like how many people already view it, which is a shame. So as I mentioned, this is the limited edition from Folio Society, which is sold out several years ago. I actually have a video on my channel where I unboxed all three volumes if you want to see what the case looks like. It came with an art print from Dave McKean as well. It's interesting. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful edition. I think Dave McKean's artwork, which is just numerous, like, I mean, it is page after page. He even did the lettering for the chapters. I mean, this is how limited editions should be. It is stunning. And even though this limited edition is sold out, his artwork is printed in full in the standard edition that Folio Society has done, which I think is still pretty kind of pricey if you were to look at, just regular trade editions. Like if you go to, Barnes & Noble or Chapters or whatever you have in your leg of the world. I think it would be cheaper just to get a paperback copy. But if you wanted a nice hardcover set, you can't go wrong with the Folio Society edition. It's all three books in one, nice slipcase. I know there are plenty of other editions out there with plenty of other illustrations. I have mentioned it in the previous videos, the previous two volumes, that Mervyn Peake was a painter himself, and he did his own illustrations for the characters as he saw them. That is probably going to be the most faithful. I mean, what could be more faithful than the author himself showing you what the characters look like? And I believe one of the trade editions does have his illustrations in full, or you can Google them as well. They are on Google. This is probably a good, nice little middle edition if you wanted to seek one out. If you wanted a truly high-end edition, you'll have to go to the secondary market and find a copy of the Suntup Editions version of it. That has not been released yet, but that is going to be fully letterpress printed. I believe it's bound in leather. It has not as many illustrations as Dave McKean has at all. I mean, McKean, you're talking over 100 illustrations between the three volumes. I think there's maybe like 5 or 6 per volume with Jay Johnston's version for Suntup. But each one of his is going to be almost like a medieval tapestry. I don't know how well it's going to fit in the third volume, where you're kind of getting away from that medieval crumbling Gothic castle. But it's going to be beautiful nonetheless. I do have a copy of that one on order, so be sure to subscribe to the channel, and you can check out the unboxing of that once it eventually ships. So anyways, Mervyn Peake, my hat is off to you, my man. I know he's written other things out there, and I want to go out and seek it. I want to read more that he has written based on these novels. They are fantastic. Titus, Groan, and Gormenghast are just absolute classics. I think Gormenghast, the second volume, is actually the best of the trilogy. Unfortunately, Titus Alone is going to be the bottom of those three, just because it doesn't quite fit with the other two. But it's still a beautiful world that Mervyn Peake has allowed you to venture into, and I think it is well worth taking the ride. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I do at least one book review a week with plenty of unboxing videos in between here and there, so plenty of stuff to keep you entertained. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you around next time.